Hi, my name's Jordan Marshall, and I'm Special Projects Editor at Building Magazine. I'm delighted to welcome you to our second session for Digital Building Week for 2023, and it's all about leveraging new technologies for net zero goals in the built environment. It's our second session on digital and net zero today, so if you missed this morning's session, I would definitely recommend going and catching that one up because it was also another great session. Today, I have a wonderful panel with me. I've got Olivia Burton, Senior Development Manager at London Land Group, Thomas Hollingsworth, Head of Technology at BW, and Mark Postel, Decarbonomics Director at Atkins Realis. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get over to our panel. Just how today's session will run is each of our panelists is going to give a presentation outlining their overall thoughts on the topic before we get into a group panel discussion Q&A. During that discussion, we want to incorporate you, the audience, as much as possible. So please send through your questions at any time, and we will ensure that we cover off as many of those as we can. On top of that, if you want to have a further look at any of our speakers' slides, they're all available via the resources tab. And yes, this session will be available on demand. Just give us about an hour after the end of the session, and it will be available on demand via the same link you've registered this morning. You can also share that with any colleagues, and they can catch up and watch too. Okay, that's probably enough from me to kick things off. So I'm going to hand over to Thomas first to get started for us.
Thanks, Jordan. Let me just bring up the presentation.
That's perfect.
Hello, everyone. As Jordan said, I'm Thomas Hollingsworth, Head of Technology here at BW. I feel like I'm a bit of an IT imposter here, IT guy, not a sustainability guy, but I'm passionate about making a difference, no matter how big or small, for the protection of where we live and without blocking innovation. In fact, I think the only way we can make a difference is through innovation. So I've made some slides today about how we're doing this at BW. I've been at BW Workplace Experts for 5 years now and arrived at a huge time of growth. It's a really exciting place to be, both in the AEC space and at BW. Hopefully you'll spare me a minute to talk about who BW is before we move on to the real stuff you're here for, what we're doing and why. We're turning over 220 million this year with a goal of reaching 300 in the next 2. We think this is the sweet spot for our mission to become the best, not the biggest fit-out provider. In terms of fit-out, we do Cat A, Cat B, higher education, campus refurb, in-situ refurb, and the latest string to our bow is a rapidly expanding turnkey D&B offering. A testament to our mission, we've got a customer experience score of 8.25 out of 10. We've also been working on our values of innovation, net zero, and inclusivity to drive us where we want to be, delivering defect-free projects that make a difference for the client and communities we live in. To support these aims, my department delivered over 37 innovation projects in the last year. You'll hear more about some of these over the next few minutes. Firstly, let's see where we are in terms of our net zero aims at BW. We've covered off the scope 1 and 2. These are really easy wins for us. We don't have any company vehicles and we don't purchase any fuel. The scope 2 is covered off as we don't directly purchase heat or electricity. What we've been working on is our scope 3, as you can see here, with the goal to reduce and where required offset all our scope 3 emissions by 2030. So let's talk about where we are as an industry. Around 40% of emissions are generated by the built environment, and then my stuff, the technology, is 4%. As we solve and invest in reducing these, technology will go up and the built environment will naturally go down. It's interesting that a ChatGPT query is estimated to generate around 5 times more emissions compared to your simple old Google search. As the demands and possibilities of AI go up, so will its consumption. It's also interesting to hear from those such as DeepMind that they're always working to do more impressive projects with AI, but with less resource requirement. It's top of their agenda and something that I'm watching very closely. But how does this apply to us in the technology department? As a quick overview, we use the technology lifestyle when looking at all innovations and procurement. As you can see, we love to mix personality, business objectives like the 3 layers, and feedback into everything to do. We're a cloud-first organization, which means we don't have to worry about emissions, right? Well, my sustainability team have told me that I really do. As we removed our servers and wires from our 35 sites and offices, this image is just for illustration. It's not a BW image. We really ought to think about where our platforms were located and with which provider. Does our platform, their platform, and the actual compute required behind negate any benefit to the emissions? We put pressure on the suppliers to make responsible choices. we partner with them, and we've been told that they're a big catalyst for our file storage provider to move from one cloud platform to another. We also hold our technology suppliers accountable to the same standards as our construction supply chain. For the first time last year at BW, we did this. We're making sure they're making these small changes for good. We also work with our partners, such as Cisco, Meraki, and Dell, to make our platforms remaining site services, such as network connectivity, are using as little energy as possible. We're using reducing Wi-Fi power during periods of low usage, and we're not running any unnecessary services overnight. A big win for us from a social value and environmental perspective was the reuse and social landfill policy introduced into our technology department over 2 years ago. Simple, low cost, low effort changes, but we're making a real difference. But let's move on to the bit you're really here for today, our operations. Let's start with our digital site. We've actually spent a huge amount of time thinking how this can be achieved without the usual approach of attaching a tablet to everyone's arms and flooding site offices with large screens loaded with charts and data. We've concentrated on the devices people already have, assuming that it was also compatible with our supply chain's devices too. For the first time, we've actually had to worry about Android app compatibility. Utilizing our collaborative approach and the lifecycle, we were able to near remove printing from site, enhance productivity and safety on site with items such as digital induction, permits, and RAMs. Each of these use a huge amount of paper, print, and human effort. Using existing issued devices such as an iPhone and laptop, we were able to make the construction process much more sustainable. We're now rolling this out as part of our site standards. So if you'd like to come and see, just give me a message after. A huge part of our approach is centered around making our systems talk to each other and achieving that single source of truth. We've all heard of that line together when it comes about terms of data, but we're working our way towards this. In terms of capturing, monitoring our scope 3 is down to a product called Qflow. We've been using this tool site-wide for over a year now. With one simple photograph captured at the point of delivery, we're removing the burden of a huge amount of carbon calculations from our SME supply chain. This has a huge number of compliance and regulatory benefits, but it's also key to being able to deliver projects with smaller local companies in the supply chain. You can see one of the simple dashboard captures on the screen now. We're now looking at how we can use this data, especially the delivery note with its OCR, for more purposes. One is making our version of the big brand pizza delivery tracker, but for a construction company. During COVID, we rapidly deployed tools that would allow a dispersed client and consultant and supply chain workflows to get closer to the build. We've now realized that these tools are key to reducing our carbon footprint. Allowing a global client to tour the site in an augmented reality session with overlaid plans and specifications with Microsoft HoloLens, or walk around the site snagging in a simple web browser with OpenSpace, which is a 360-degree photograph captured AI mapping solution. It was key to avoiding a CEO needing to jump on a plane from the US on a weekly basis. Again, we're building on this data that we have to capture regularly to give us more intelligence. So with the OCR delivery note, the program loaded into Procore, the OpenSpace site mapped, we have all the pieces to accurately capture build progress. We're now working on the build tracker, our version of the big brand pizza delivery tracker. We believe that the research has shown that even as delivery times increased due to demand, the perception of time from the consumer was actually reduced when the communication process is made very clear. It's that similar effect as when you're standing on the train platform. It's very confidence building to see your next train is only 2 minutes away. Reducing travel and giving an extra layer in the build confidence. So the key word at the time is AI. It's a buzz term at the moment and something we're already readily using on site. AI is helping us with sustainable design. It's working out optimization patterns for the workplace and helping us create better and safer environments. We're monitoring air quality, noise, and temperature on our sites using low-powered Bluetooth connected devices and feeding it back into our compute. This ensures our sites are operating safely and to see how we can run them better in the future. A simple air quality score, alert, or robotic action is the result, so none of our teams need to upskill or learn anything. Smart building of smart buildings. That handily brings us on to our next topic. We've been working across many smart buildings in the past 7 years, most recently for a large software company. The challenge was to connect the tenant services into the landlord BMS using the smart building platform. This takes into account all the services and ensures the building is operating within tolerance, which can be adjusted based on machine learning and AI models. Getting fresh air into the building is a key concern from both an energy saving standpoint and also during the pandemic health concerns. If you'd like to know more about our work within smart buildings and the platforms we use, it's a much bigger topic than we have time for today. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn and connect you to our friendly TSM team. Finally, we always have to end on something inspirational or thought-provoking, and I think this is what we're really working towards. We want real, tangible solutions that will set the minimum standard for future years delivered today. Thanks for your time today, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions later in the session.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Thomas. That was a great start for the session today. Could I just ask you if you could stop sharing your screen? And Olivia, if you wouldn't mind jumping in next, that'd be great. And yes, as Thomas said, please, to our audience, feel free to send those questions through at any time. I know a couple have already come through, so it'd be great to get you all sharing your thoughts.
Of course, no problem. Thank you. And thanks, Thomas, for setting a really high bar to follow. It's always difficult being the sandwich piece in the middle. So let me just bring that up. Hopefully that's working okay.
Yep, that's fine. Thanks.
Brilliant. So as Jordan just mentioned, my name's Olivia Burton. I work for a small developer called London Land Group. It's one of our schemes that you can see handily put on there. Just to give a little bit of an introduction to who we are. We are a small developer. We have got 2 schemes currently live. We've got 4, which is down on site at the minute. And we've also got another 122 unit scheme up in Bromley in London. 3 things that are really important to us is sort of creating an ultimate lifestyle products that people want to live in and are really passionate about. It's also doing this in a responsible and efficient way, and hopefully creating a really connected experience at the end of that too. So technology is something that we've invested a large amount in, and hopefully I'll talk about in a little bit more detail as we move through these slides. So we're on a bit of a journey at the minute, as a lot of developers and a lot of people in the construction space are, in terms of how we sort of tangibly not only measure our current development footprints, but also how we improve on these as we go on. And we work with a lot of investors who are European investors, and they obviously have far more stringent targets and expectations than we do currently within the UK. So I've kept this in here because this is ultimately, we're here to talk about technology and how we're leveraging that, but this is the piece behind it really. For us, it's critical that we can see the impact and the benefit of all of the technology that we're implementing, either through our design process, our on-site process, or even operationally at the end in terms of our residences, to make sure that it is actually having an impact and it is something that we can positively measure as well. In response to all of this, as a business, we've launched something which is called Total Concepts. This is our attempt at trying to really be very systematic about development and try and measure twice, cut once, which is probably something you'll see me or hear me mention a couple of times today. We really want to work hard with modern methods of construction, make everything very modular, very systematic, and in a way that we can break things down into components we can much more easily control. We can measure those, we can look at new products and new solutions for them. And ultimately, it's a lot easier for us to contain data about those individual components and work out how we can make them more sustainable too. Something that's been really critical for us is partnerships, and it's something that Thomas mentioned earlier in his presentation too. By bringing people on that we partner with, we're able to make sure that they're working towards the same goals that we are, and that they've ultimately got sustainability at the forefront of what they're doing as well. Product book is something that's really important to us. That is how we are ultimately managing our developments and trying to make everything a lot more standardized, a lot more efficient. It doesn't work on every site, as many people will testament to, but it always gives us a starting point and something that we're able to develop up and control. And lastly, procurement is something that we work really hard at. We are self-delivering our scheme down in Poole, so we do have a construction aspect to this as well. And the way that we go about securing our supply chain is making sure that, again, they're tied into the same sustainable goals that we are. And by contracting directly with subcontractors and with package providers, we're able to have greater visibility over what's happening on site and manage it in a much more efficient way. So I'm going to try and break down what we're doing at the minute, or sort of our takeaways on leveraging technology across 3 different stages of the process. At design stage, as I mentioned, introducing product book for us has been sort of critical. Using BIM, we've been able to break down each of the components within the building, work out how we can standardize those and how we can repeat them over multiple levels. And for us, this has been a massive thing, reducing the amount of waste on site by designing earlier and in much more detail before we even start any sort of construction activity has meant that we're minimizing waste throughout the process, not just in terms of off-site manufacture, but also actually by the time we get on site, we've sort of gotten rid of those extra little bits of board that we don't need. We've made sure that everything is vertically stacked. We've got a lot less crossovers and far fewer clashes to resolve on site. Another thing for us is that we've started looking at how AI can actually take an overall building mass and then using our standardized layouts and modules, essentially come up with individual floor plates for us. It's still at the early stages and we are really only sort of trialing it from a layout perspective, but we're hopeful that as we continue to work with some of our partners, that that'll be able to sort of work a lot harder for us with the design stages, and our architectural role will be more curating, checking, overseeing, and things really can be standardized across the board. I put something in here about human emotion, because with AI, you can set metrics about how you want to produce a design and how you want to produce a layout. And then rather than perhaps looking at the way that the journey goes and how something looks and feels, it's much more focused on metrics. Is it a sustainable solution? Is it going to use less material? Is it going to use a more sustainable product? Yes. And then it will select that for you. Something else that we're trying to work with at the minute is a product called Autodesk Forma, which enables you to set up a massing and essentially monitor different angles that you could put that massing within a site against sunlight hours, daylight potential, wind and microclimate. And again, it can also look at then producing a prediction for operational energy based on how you position that massing within a site, which has been an incredibly useful tool for us to start using. In the construction stage is probably something that I would say that we struggle with the most in terms of harnessing data in a way that is manageable across the board. We have lots of different individual systems that track lots of different types of activity. We've got systems that are managing waste, systems that are managing fuel and deliveries, other systems that are managing air quality, and we have found it quite a challenge to bring that all together in one so that we've got a real-time picture of what our operational carbon footprint is on site. Another challenge that we've had is sort of the upskilling required at site level and utilising BIM models. We do a lot of work at the design stage that hopefully means that you don't need to really get too far into the detail. Then at the construction stage, it should run a lot smoother, but you still need to be able to use the models and input data from site back into it and take data back out of the model in terms of pulling out quantities of materials. And that has been a challenge for us. Heat mapping by cameras is working really well. Sort of an AI system that's been used inside buildings quite a lot, tracking sort of movement patterns around site. We've noticed a huge amount of double handling that we're now able to try and reduce down and sort of minimize overlap. And my last takeaway just on this is to highlight that it's quite challenging to find an agreed set of metrics and reporting across the industry, and it's very easy to sort of manipulate data to sort of achieve targets, but it's whether that's actually helping us achieve the overall goal. Operational stage, I think, is an area that we really excel at the minute, and it's a lot easier to sort of harness technology for us. So from our BIM model that we're able to build throughout the construction stage, that's a lot easier to hand over to operational teams. And one thing that we're working quite hard at with our BIM modeling is integrating systems such as smart buildings from the very outset. So we use a lot of precast systems on site. So we're casting in conduits, light switches, plug sockets really early on within the build process, and it has to be coordinated well. What this means, though, is that at handover, all of our residents have the ability to control lighting, heating, cooling, appliances. Essentially, their entire home is connected at the minute via an app called SmartThings, which is via our partner Samsung. This offers ultimate visibility, even down to metering that's available on each breaker and a distribution board. So rather than just saying, oh, I think somewhere in my utility room I'm using a lot of energy, you can actually break it down to each individual component and track how and when that's happening. Something that's been amazing working with Samsung on is their AI-enabled appliances. one that I particularly loved is their washing machines, which have the ability, if you're not in a rush to do your washing, you can put it in when you come home from work, set the machine, and what it will do is it will find the most efficient time to run the washing machine so that you not only reduce your energy bills, but it's also when it's drawing power from the grid in such a way that's reducing its overall impact too. Something, as I mentioned, we're using on site with heat mapping. We're using something very similar within communal spaces to track behaviour and patterns, and also booking systems, preheating spaces sort of just before they need to be used so that people don't suddenly get in there and feel the need to ramp up the heating. It all sounds like really basic stuff, but when you bring it together as an overall package, it's quite powerful in terms of reducing our overall footprint operationally. Real-time sort of monitoring and data of energy usage, we found that it's quite helpful, and lots of other developers have offered this feedback to us as well. If you can actually provide a bit of a competition in terms of energy performance, seeing not necessarily who each resident is, but being able to see how overall you rank within the building is really good. And lastly, I'm just going to touch on sort of weather vanes and sensors. We're actually using this on site for different reasons at the minute because we've got a lot of crane activity going on, but weather vanes and sensors to be able to better predict optimum times for heating and cooling to come on, when we need to have lighting, when we don't need to have lighting, is something that we're working very hard to integrate throughout all of our developments, and I think is making a big difference. Those are sort of the key things that I wanted to cover. I think one thing that I haven't really touched on is experimental materials, and it's something that we are keen to do more on. Because we use a lot of precast and off-site manufacture, it does give us the opportunity to trial new products and trial things that are coming forward in the market. We've been looking at doing a graphene trial, which is essentially a carbon type of reinforcement rather than steel reinforcement. One of our biggest challenges is warranty. And whilst we might have the agility and the flexibility to take on new products, the industry and sort of the residential market isn't always in the same space. So hopefully this will continue to develop over the next few years too. And those are sort of the key things. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was such a detailed presentation, covered so much ground. Plenty for us all to think about there heading into the Q&A. Just before we get there, Mark, could I ask you to share your slides and share with us your thoughts?
Absolutely, Jordan. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll give you a sneak preview. Okay, one moment. Okay, let's try that again.
Perfect.
Okay, terrific stuff. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jordan. This is an introduction to our decarbonomics service line that we've invested in the last couple of years and is out now and real and delivering for our clients. First off, though, who are Atkins Realis? A new name, a new brand. We're 1 month in now from our rebrand of the businesses of SNC Lavalin, which incorporated the global engineering firm Atkins and the global project and program services business Faithful and Gould as well, now unified under one brand called Atkins Realis. So a new name in the industry, but hundreds of years of combined experience still there, still the same business doing the same great things. And we have, as I say, in terms of being a large global engineering firm and beyond just engineering, we're working all aspects of net zero. I think in terms of last year, we were now up to broadly half of the services we're providing are actually net zero related, some of which will be because we're specifically targeting those projects, and some of it certainly as the as market and the net zero journey is becoming more and more important to all of our customers. So as a global engineering firm, we're doing things such as our nuclear part of the business is working in tokamak fusion energy. We've got our aviation departments are working in the future of flight, looking at electric powered planes or hydrogen based fuel. So many aspects to look at within the realms of AtkinsRéalis, and I'd encourage everyone to have a look at our engineering netzero.com website to be able to have a look at a little bit more. Particularly in relation to real estate, we have been looking at 3 aspects of that which align with our UK Green Building Council Gold Leaf membership as well. So we're looking at where we can help support the design of buildings, and we have a Carbon Insights program looking at the specifics of new build design and reducing the carbon impact of that. We have existing buildings being about 80% of the buildings that will be here in 2050 are already built. So existing buildings is a major part of the decarbonisation process, and for that we've developed the tool and the service offering called Decarbonomics, which we'll talk through in a second. And the third aspect of our net zero approach for real estate is our Carbon Academy as well, which is specifically in place to equip globally our workforce with the net zero skill sets and knowledge to be able to make a tangible difference in the arenas that we work in. So what is decarbonomics itself? As I said, it relates specifically to existing buildings. That's the challenge that this particular solution has been set up for, and it's looking at being able to create quick and cost-effective operational energy road mapping and sort of current baselining, so that we can help our clients to establish where they currently are on a net zero pathway and be able to create some pragmatic deliverable solutions and plans for them to be able to align with their own net zero aspirations. It's something we're quite proud of. It's taken a lot of time, effort, and investment to get to where we are at the moment. And where we are at the moment is out there with clients delivering this, and this is now a very much a real service offering. And particularly sort of proud that that also got recognised about this time last year, and part of the SIBSE Society of Digital Engineering awards this time last year, where we secured the best process and its application, and also the overall winner of the awards for 2022. So don't just take our word for it. It's been recognised as a market leading offering out there. I think one of the key things, and it was terrific to see, Thomas, your view on everything within BW as well. It seems if it's where we are now as a platform or as a industry is to be able to start integrating many different digitized facets of solutions and start to bring them together and layer them upon each other to be able to create coalesced solutions for our clients. I think this is very much part of the benefits that the Decarbonomics brings. We have a number of existing digitized platforms, and we've then incorporated those together in order to and then take that further forward within this specific realm. So we have a survey platform called Assist that allows our teams to go to site, collect information, and provide that data straight into a centralized sort of data lake, which can create portfolio insights. We also created a Carbon Data Insights, which is our name for collecting together all of the various benchmarks and guidance and building design and regulations that have existed, and to be able to bring those together, to be able to create some proxy data and proxy information that can backfill data gaps that our clients may have. And I think that's one of the key things that we're finding as we move forward. The data as it is at the moment, we've been talking for years around BIM and digital twins and the like, but the actual level of data that is available on the built environment at the moment is still very, very poor. So to be able to call on something such as our Carbon Data Insights that can fill a lot of those gaps, we've found is hugely important. We then have two further aspects, more around the delivery side of things, around our Benchmark Plus, which relates to our cost management benchmarking. So that allows us to keep track of trends and build up cost modeling based on market benchmarking and our understanding from our many interactions with the construction market throughout the UK and beyond, and our Navigator platform, which is our program management platform, which again, that single source of truth that was talked about earlier. How can we turn myriad Excel documents scattered around many different places into one combined dedicated platform that allows detail and oversight all within one platform. So we've used and created these four, and we've supplemented them with further modeling and digital algorithms to be able to create what we call decarbonomics. So we have three main parts of decarbonomics. We have an initial stage, which is setting and understanding where our clients' existing portfolio is from a carbon and energy efficiency basis. We then have an opportunity with them to look at setting the various parameters for them when they may be looking to get to net zero, the amount of budget they may have available, the amount of existing work that they already may well be doing in that space, to be able to set and model many different scenarios of what a roadmap may look like to reduce both energy efficiency and the carbon down to hopefully down to zero or below, or if not, to at least identify the work that's still required to do to either offset or to find other solutions. And then we move into our third stage, which is actually deliver. And with all of these things, it's so important that the good work up front to define the roadmap is not something that is printed off and put on a shelf, that it's something live and dynamic that allows an active and dynamic view to be formed as interventions get designed and developed and built and then verified and measured, to be able to actually see against how the real estate is performing against the plans. And so that is our sort of final bit of correlation that allows then to loop back and feed back into sort of the benchmark and road mapping process in a dynamic way. What does it look like in detail? We have many aspects that we can measure, and in a way we have we're able to bespoke this per client. But you can see here, this is potentially more towards a commercial real estate portfolio, where we're looking at the amount of operational carbon that's against maybe sort of trapped within existing leases, areas in which you may not be able to actually take control of over a certain amount of time, and it's comparing on the left there the energy use intensity against the UK Green Building Council's sort of 2035 Paris proof target. And what's really important, I think, with the way in which we built this is that this allows it's built up from the bottom because we're able to use the digital information, we've been able to create this so that we create a digital twin for each building within the portfolio, so we can analyze right down to quite a deep basis on a building by building or even a unit by unit basis, and form those overall portfolio scenarios, not just from top level portfolio view, but built up from a real feeling of multitudes of detail. And that's only possible using a digital platform. Skipping forward, a bit more of a detail in terms of the road mapping there. So you can see actually we've got the trends there. The top, the pink line there, there's a natural kind of carbon baseline, because we also take information from the anticipated carbon intensity of the grid as well. So as we move forward, as the central grid is decarbonising, there's a general trend towards net zero as it is, but of course there's still some way to go, certainly within the next 20-30 years. And so that's where we can show the combination of the reduction of the carbon intensity of the grid, and also the direct energy and carbon efficiency aspects on an intervention by intervention basis. Here's a bit more of a close-up detail of the specifics. You can see the graph in the middle, the forecast versus actual, and likewise the spend as well. And that's the most important probably for our clients. In terms of Navigator, this is again the beauty of being able to create and overlay and layer the information that, and the tools that we already have as a digital basis for many of our services. So incorporating with Navigator, that allows us to get into really detailed intervention by intervention style parameters and data in relation to the design, development and the like as well, and that can then feed in automatically to our overall deliver dashboard, so that we can be the design teams or the contracting teams on site can have very good detail of what's required, but that is the same information that is then used to be able to report at C-suite level and overall program level as well. So in summary, what we've been able to create, particularly using the carbon data insights, is that we believe that it's allowing our clients to start when they don't even think they can start. We're very conscious that, as important as this is, most of our clients, this is they have more important things. They have their main business drivers that they need to be focusing on, but they need to be moving forward with net zero at the same time. So that what we're able to do, integrating their business as usual, we're able to show them the progress that they're already going to be making, even though they're focused elsewhere. And in particular, that they're able to have confidence, having mapped and reviewed their roadmap and understand whereabouts they're going, that they're able to deliver in confidence and deliver knowing that they can move that forward aligned with all of their existing plans. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark. If I could ask all our panelists to pop their cameras on and unmute themselves, that'd be great. And we'll jump into the Q&A. You all covered a lot of ground there, and I certainly was, my hand cramped up halfway through there taking notes on everything you were all saying. But one of the first things I sort of wanted to jump into, was, you meant a few of you mentioned it in different ways, the idea of AI and its applications. How sort of central do you see this being to this, sustainability push in the built environment moving forward?
Maybe I'll sort of tackle that from my perspective, George. And I think in terms of I think in terms for us, we see there's a lot of potential for AI to help harness our insights into how people are using things so that we can get smarter and leaner. As to whether it's yet going to sort of take over fully, I think there's still an element that it's only ever as good as the information that you sort of put in at the front end and how well you're able to harness the data at the back end. It's sort of a process. But I think definitely it's made a massive difference to the way that we see how people use things and how people are active on site as well.
Brilliant. Did Mark or Thomas, did you have any thoughts that you want to add on that one?
Yeah, sure. For us, I think it is taking away those manual processes so that people can actually concentrate on the creative things that they should be doing rather than bogged down in admin. So the robotic processes, that's where we're kind of focusing our attention on initially, and then we can expand that, build upon that data warehouse that we're building as we do that, so that we can then do more complicated things.
Brilliant.
Yeah, from our side of things, it's hugely important. It can help with speed and scale. It's very important though that it can be trusted. I think that's the aspect of it reflecting again the rubbish in, rubbish out sort of scenario here, that as long as it can be created and built with the right human inputs and the right viewpoints to be looking at, then it's going to be able to provide us with some huge advantages. But I think it still very much feels as if we're in the position of gaining that trust into it fully before we're able to really navigate this further.
Yeah, brilliant. And all of you covered some very interesting and different, like leveraging different technologies and different applications in different parts of the process. But one thing that I sort of drew as a universal was the importance of measuring and capturing that data to make sure what you were doing, having the right dashboards and that sort of thing. How do you go about ensuring that you are actually producing the correct, how do you go about making sure you are tracking it in the right way? How do you make sure those dashboards and whatever other platforms you're using to measure your impact are reliable for these new technologies? Thomas, you unmuted first. You can go first.
First. I think from us, it's really capturing what the people on site want, and then what our customers want, finding out those levels of information. So really, we spend most of our time capturing those requirements before we bring them back. And then also, once we've done something, we're always looking for quick iterations. I think that's one thing that we've noticed, is that if we get something wrong, we can fast fail and then we try again, rather than before, when you were looking at countless hours development, you'd probably spend 6-12 months working on something only to find out it's not quite right, or not what that person wants, or not specific to that customer. Whereas we can now develop lots of different solutions for lots of different people that all bring back those accurate results in a shorter time.
Olivia?
I think that's actually the challenge sort of across the board, really, is you can pick what data you want to mine, and you can pick how you manipulate that, and you can sort of not pick how well you're performing, because ultimately the data will always tell you how well you're doing against sort of operational carbon. But definitely from a site level, I think that's been one of the toughest things for us, is finding a common sort of metric and a common sort of data to measure against how well we're actually doing or not doing, and you end up sort of picking that for yourself. And it's the same with the whole sort of cradle to gate, cradle to cradle argument. How much of the project lifecycle do you monitor, and does that change project on project? Does that change depending on which investor, or do you just decide that actually this is what we're going to do as a business and stick to it? I actually think that's a really big problem with sustainability across the board.
Absolutely. Mark, did you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's really, really healthy for the industry to be considering this, to be out there talking with customers and engaging more and more, talking and understanding and really thinking about the processes, because so many of the processes have been locked down and been so similar for the last decades, and actually this is now giving us a chance to go out there and try different things and test things and move things forward in a faster, more innovative way. And I think it can only be beneficial for the entire industry that we've got people able to look at how we're doing things and making sure it's the right way to do it.
Brilliant. Sam McGowan from Garner and Theobald has sent through a couple of questions for specific panelists, but I will ask them to the person he wants them sent to first. And then if anybody else has thoughts, please jump in afterwards, because, we can always make them a more rounded conversation. So first to you, Olivia. He sort of asked, from a developer perspective, how do you feedback the efficiency of smart tech back into your initial client brief?
The answer is, at the minute, I'd like to say I have something smarter than this, but manually. Product book is a bit of an evolving sort of function and tool. So I think I mentioned on Pool, we're in a smart building process with ABB and Samsung, and we're working on the basis that everything is hardwired. So we're casting in conduits, getting in there early with the design process. And that was very much the plan for Bromley. But because we're partnered with people like Samsung and ABB, we're sort of constantly working with them to try and predict what's coming next and to learn lessons. And casting in conduits hasn't always gone perfectly so far for us. So already on the Bromley scheme now, we're looking at sort of dynamo wireless switches that don't need to be hardwired in. Instead, actually the operation of the switch itself provides enough battery power to run essentially the piece of hardware. And then that's now in the latest iteration. So the reality is it's a constantly evolving beast, but it has to be if you're going to actually learn the lesson and take the feedback from what's happening at site level. So it's not a very sexy answer, but that's the reality of what we're doing at the minute.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that one? Or nope, that's all good. Olivia, sorry, the second part, there's another second part for you before we jump into the next one. It was, how do you set embodied operational energy targets across your development? Embodied / operational, sorry. That's
we start off with using LETI as a sort of a target, especially for an operational perspective. So 35 kilowatt hours per square metre per year. And always then see if we can benchmark ourselves either better than that if we're able to, or sort of stick with that as a target. Embodied carbon is harder, and we've come under more flack from this recently, depending on the investors that we have involved in different projects. So the carbon sort of roadmap that you'll have seen that I put up in the slides is a piece of work that we did for a European investor in a scheme that we've got coming up in London. And they had a really stringent target of 8 kilograms of CO2e per square metre per annum, which on residential schemes in the UK is really, really hard to achieve unless you're building with sort of cross-laminated timber or timber that you've sort of mined from a forest almost direct to the site that you're building on, and have used all local labour within a really short radius of the site. So what we've now started to do is almost ironically use that as a bit of a benchmark that we know it's going to be really, really hard to hit, and you're always going to be against that. But just use it as something to sort of drive towards, because it would be amazing if we were able to achieve it. I think the last sort of anecdote that I might just touch on this is the sort of the struggle sometimes between operational carbon and embodied carbon. So we use a concrete precast system. It's a rapid res with Korea that we're using down in Pool. And it's a fantastic system because operationally it's very like fabric first, thermally efficient. It's fantastic from a fire perspective. But actually from an embodied carbon perspective, it's quite a struggle for us because it's not very easy to use cement replacement within precast at the minute. It's something that people are trialing and trying to get the consistency of finish with. So ultimately, you're stuck with a very dense amount of concrete on site, but operationally, it's going to make massive benefits to us and to the residents that live in that scheme. And it's just an example of one of those push-pull things that we see quite often as developers trying to do the sort of the right thing. Is sometimes you can hurt yourself on the other side.
Brilliant. Mark, next one was for you, and that was how do you ensure the accuracy of the platform? Have you completed pilot tests on existing buildings, and at what design stage would you ideally become involved?
Hi there. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think so the accuracy is a scale. We've got to try and work out whereabouts we sort of start on that. So when we, on the deliver side of things, when we're about to place a contract or about to start work, we have to have everything absolutely nailed down.
Did Mark just disappear for everybody, or is that just for me? Just checking.
No, he's gone for me too.
It's gone for me too.
Well, hopefully he can jump back in. I'll get Celine on that. And in the meantime, Thomas, I had a question for you around, I thought it was really interesting. I know you talked about your project delivery as well, but if we are considering the built environment, some of the early part of your presentation was about, how you can make your business operations more sustainable. What are some of like the, simplest early ways that, built environment firms could start looking to do that from, your IT perspective?
I think a real crucial one for us was reducing that need for travel. Hypothetically, a subcontractor would be required to come back to site to look at a snag or find something out, whereas we can provide them that information without them having to come to site, so they can stay wherever they are centrally and just come to do the actual job, which is better for health and safety for us, and then better for them traveling. And I think that was also the case. We do a lot of work with multinational clients where they would be flying back and forth to look at build progress. And that's obviously generating a huge amount of carbon. So bringing them closer, being able to have a conversation with them about the building. And actually they said it's more detailed because you can't walk around with every plan of the building in your hand. You need to go back to the office, come back to the particular part of the site. Whereas they were walking around site, bringing up all the plans at once in that location that they were. And it was a real achievement for us to have that level of client satisfaction. And then also the printing was a huge one as well. Not only does it look hideous when you go to a site and there's paper everywhere, but it's also, a real carbon emitting thing that's happening. And obviously when drawings go through several revisions, they get reprinted out at a huge cost to the client. So enabling those to be on smart screens, which we reuse from site to site, on the devices of the subcontractors available. That was a real win for us as well, reducing the print. I think on the one site that we tried on, we reduced print by about 96%, which is huge for us.
That's great. Okay, brilliant. Another thing that I sort of wanted to ask, maybe you in the first instance about, Olivia, is do you sort of prioritize in your supply chain, trying to find people? Mark, you're back. Maybe I'll let you finish your answer before I ask Olivia another question.
Sure, we'll see how it goes. I've been seeing green or red. If I go, I go. In short, the earlier the better. We can get involved. We've got to take it all the way through. The idea is to go all the way through to delivering the interventions. At that point, we need to have full due diligence undertaken. The earlier the better we can get involved. The earlier you can start aligning it with your other plans.
Brilliant, thanks. So Olivia, what I was going to ask you just quickly was when you're sort of trying to sort out your supply chain, who you're going to have working on a scheme, do you prioritize those who are sort of looking at these new ways, these new technologies that could help in that pursuit of net zero?
Yeah, we are quite in a fortunate position, as I mentioned, because we're direct procuring and working with subcontractors, that we sort of get the benefit of trying to almost invite them into offer bits of innovation that maybe it wouldn't always be possible to do. As I mentioned, it isn't always a perfect storm. We've been battered back into submission by warranty providers on a number of occasions on our sort of full scheme, because if you can't provide a tried and tested example of something, it can be really challenging. But on the whole, yes, it is something that we prioritise, and definitely local labour as well and local supply chain. That's been a sort of a big game changer for us.
Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, I'm very conscious that we're rapidly running out of time. There's a couple more from the audience, so I'll try and move through those before I jump back into my own questions. So we had this one come through from Brian Simpson of Studio Moda, who wanted to ask about some thoughts on offsite modules of the future. And I know, Olivia, you were chatting a little bit about offsite, but any other thoughts would also be great. Do we think that they will be fitted with sensors within the fabric to gauge in-use data performance to feed back into design model for future projects? Is that something that people feel could be a realistic aim in some time period in the future?
One thing that we are seeing happening at the minute, just in terms of sort of the modules and the offsite elements that we're doing, is that people are fitting sort of trackers within the fabric for a couple of different reasons. One, because you can track your in time better within things like concrete, so you can sort of move it through the QA process a lot quicker. Likewise, we're doing it on site where we are casting in situ works, because it just gives you the advantage of sort of cracking on a bit quicker, and also actually to track from the moment that a panel starts through the production process, essentially how long it takes to get through each stage, and also how long it takes to get across the site, miles traveled, etc. Because obviously that also factors into, site manufacturing is fantastic for lots of reasons, but it can also be a drag in terms of diesel haulage consumption back and forth. It isn't perfect. So that is something that we're definitely seeing happening, and there's a lot of drive for. But I think in terms of monitoring the fabric, like the performance of that fabric, I would hope that that's something that could happen, but it's not necessarily something that we're seeing just yet.
Brilliant. Okay. So we've only got 5 minutes left. So I'm very conscious that we've covered a lot of ground. All of you raised some really great points. So I'd be super keen if I could ask each of you to sort of maybe give 1 or 2 key takeaways that you'd want the audience to consider as they're leaving today's session. Does anyone particularly want to go first, or am I going to pick on people? All right, I'm going to go, Mark. You can go first. You went first.
Super, thank you. Things for the audience to consider. I quite like the point we touched on earlier, that this is we've got kind of probably a once in a generation opportunity right now to really, for us all who have got another 20-30 years left in the industry, to now go and define what we're going to create now to deliver for the in our decades of climate action going forward. It's for us to go and define and create this new model that we're going to work to.
Okay, brilliant. Thomas, what about you?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to see today how much synergy we all have as small businesses going forward, and how we want to collect that same data normally in the same ways, even though we are from different industries, and that we're all working towards the same goal. Really, we want to achieve that net zero, and we realize that technology is one of the biggest tools that we can use, but we've also touched upon how important people are as well in that scenario.
Brilliant. And Olivia, last but not least.
Yeah, I think, just to emphasize, I suppose, the enthusiasm that's hopefully we've all tried to put across today. I think just don't be afraid to try stuff. So many of the things that we as a developer have implemented were somebody sitting in a conversation and having a blue sky moment and thinking, what about if we did it this way? Or what about if we trialed this? There's a huge amount of technology out there, and it's there for us to sort of use and try. Some of it will be great, some of it won't be, but give it a shot. It's doing good things.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. I really appreciated all of you giving up your time today, all your expertise and your time in the preparation for today's session. I know they don't just happen. So a huge thank you to Thomas, Mark and Olivia. I'd also love to say a big thanks to Atkins Realis for sponsoring today's session. Without the support of firms such as yourself, we wouldn't be able to put on events like this. So we really are appreciative of that. I'd also love to thank our audience today, sent through some great questions. So I really appreciate you getting involved in the conversation. It was great to see so many of you engaged in the conversation. I'd also just like to give a little shout out. We have 2 more sessions tomorrow. We've got 2 sessions every day this week up until including Thursday. But tomorrow, attention turns to digital design and delivery with sessions at 11 and 2 p.m. once again. As I said at the start, this session will be available on demand. Just give us about 60 minutes to turn it around so that it'll be available via the same link you joined today. And just finally, one more thank you to our panel, who I think did such a wonderful job today. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordan.